unemployment numbers today. Unemployment numbers today stayed about the same. So let's get the economist from the Council of Trade Unions in. It is Craig Renney. Kia ora, Craig. Long time no see.
Kia ora, gents. How are you?
Yeah, doing well.
Good, man.
The story on One News is only 2 minutes, so I reckon we should watch it, and then we can have a chat about it. So this is One News tonight with Simon Dallow sharing the story about the job numbers, the unemployment numbers.
After an upward march for more than 3 years, New Zealand's unemployment rate has stopped in its tracks. It's defied expectations to hold steady at 5.1% for the March quarter. But the Reserve Bank's warning our economy is still facing some tough times ahead. Corazon Miller explains.
Ishan Shah would love a job, any job, even if it's not in his chosen field of IT.
Cafes, bars, restaurants, retail stores, cleaning, construction. I haven't really had much success.
One News met him as he was going door to door handing out his CV,
Wow.
but he remains one of some 156,000 people out of work.
It gets pretty lonely as a result of it because everyone else is working, and it has not only has a huge impact not only financially but even emotionally.
Today's unemployment rate welcomed by the Prime Minister.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's great. I mean, it's not great. I mean, we want to have the unemployment going down. But
What? Oh, what an excellent comment from someone who is definitely very good at this.
Mr. Luxon, great.
I mean, we want to have the unemployment going down, but when you look at the forecast, where I think it was forecast to continue to rise, that's encouraging news.
Every job has a family, has a table that you've got to put food on. This is about people. Any job losses are just not good.
Many of those job losses, she says, are a result of the government's choices.
It's the national government not investing enough into our economy to ensure that people stay in jobs.
Public sector cuts have driven unemployment up, but other sectors have also struggled with less cash to splash.
A lot of those media job cuts have really come through over the past year, and then you have other industries such as construction where you're seeing lower volumes of construction work.
The Reserve Bank says the domestic economy remains subdued, as evidenced by the weaker job and housing markets, and America's war on trade is likely to pose more challenges ahead.
There's also some really big questions around just the whole structural makeup of the global economy, about how different supply chains could get disrupted, how different industries could get disrupted.
But he's confident in New Zealand's economic resilience, and there are already signs things are looking up.
I definitely think the economy is turning a corner. The labour market is generally the last piece of the economy to move.
With today's unemployment rate sitting steady, there's hope we'll see that movement sooner rather than later. Corazon Miller, One News.
All right, Craig, not that they use these words. I'm thinking the Prime Minister gave the economy sort of a C+. Could be better, could be worse. Your thoughts?
If he did, and I was his teacher, I would mark him down for not really doing the reading. There are essentially 37,000 more people unemployed than at the last election.
Right.
Right.
Oh, a small town. That's
town,
fine.
right? So that's what sort of a little, but about the same size as Palmerston North. So there are 45,000 fewer people in full-time work. But there are 25,000 people more in part-time work. What that means is the unemployment number remains low, but people can't get work. They can't get the hours of work that they want. But there are 3 million fewer hours being worked than this time last year.
Wow.
So
That's an
when we
interesting
look
way
at
to put it.
So when we look at what's going on, also that unemployment is very unevenly distributed. If you're Māori, across the general economy, unemployment's 5.1%. If you're Māori, unemployment's 10.5%.
Wow.
If you're Pasifika, unemployment is 10.8%. So there's so much in this data. There are what now 96,600 15 to 24-year-olds unemployed in New Zealand. So to say that things are getting better sort of completely misses the point. We have fewer people working in manufacturing, in construction, in retail, in education, and in healthcare than last quarter. But apparently that's okay. So, there's a huge range of sort of ways of cutting this cake, but all of them lead to bad outcomes. There's nothing below that headline rate that is actually good news.
We talked to you once before about this in particular. I mean, we've talked to you, I think officially 300 times, Craig, but, and we were talking about unemployment numbers when it was around 4. And I'm pretty sure you said, anything above, I think you might have said 4.5% is a choice by the government. Is that still where we're sitting? Like if we had been at 4.5, because everyone said unemployment would go up as the inflation comes down.
Yeah.
So what would be a healthy onto it going economy today should the government not have made those choices? Would it still be a 4 point something, or should it be a 3 point something?
I mean, in a perfect world, it would be 0. But I mean, you're right. If the government hadn't made deliberate decisions to disinvest in a range of areas, it would certainly have a 4 in front of it. Okay. If the government hadn't made deliberate decisions to stop the building of state housing, we wouldn't have that many fewer people working in construction. If we hadn't made deliberate decisions to basically grind to a halt the building of Dunedin Hospital, we might have some more people working in construction. The key thing here is that it's not just about those who've lost their jobs, as unfortunate as that is. Those people who are in work are also still suffering. 41% of Kiwis, according to the data, didn't get a pay rise last year. Just under half got a pay rise less than inflation. Yep. So the pain here, right, is not just in particular communities. If you're in work, you're also still suffering. And the thing is that if unemployment's 5.1%, if you've got 156,000 people unemployed, if youth unemployment's spiraling, if Māori, Pacifica unemployment is growing that quickly, right? Have a plan. Have some kind of sense that you're going to do something. Have some kind of notion that you're going to try and fix it, rather than just turning up and saying, well, that's a good number, and then leaving it there.
Hey, Craig, how do we make this stick? How do we make the tail stick? And the example I always think of is at the last election, the National Party were able to say about the results of 15-year-olds in school, and no one seemed to be able to make the fact stick that the reason those 15-year-olds were getting those results was because of national standards that National put in 2011. So how, when Labor, let's just say hypothetically get back in next time, and then there aren't enough builders because they've all gone to Australia, how do we make that stick so we can appropriately place blame where blame is deserved?
Well, the first thing we can do is actually understand the problem, because right now the National Party's unpicking and taking apart all of the vocational education training reforms that have been put in place so we could actually do workforce planning. So I could tell you how many workers were needed in construction or in retail or somewhere else. Because once you've got that, you can then have a plan to then address that. Right now, we don't know, and we've deliberately taken that data away so that we can't know how many people should be working in different areas. We also should be planning to build, particularly in construction, when we have a recession, when we have downturns in the economy, like now, right? When the economy is going gangbusters, I will be the first person on your TV screen saying we need to stop building as the Crown staff because we're going to run out of capacity, right? And we need to allow that to cool off a bit, and then we'll pick back up, because that's our job as government, right? But there's a little number here which I hope might help your viewers sort of understand the problem in a sort of a really simple way. In 2022, in the global index of all of the countries of the advanced economies in the world, developed economies in the world, the OECD, New Zealand was 6th for unemployment.
Okay.
Today, we're 18th.
So 6th meaning 6th best, and now it's 18th. Right.
Now it's 18th. Right. We have fallen. We fell a little bit. We fell a few numbers, but we fell in 2024 to 15th, and now we're 18th. And that's telling you it's not that everywhere's really suffering and we're just following along with that suffering. We're doing far worse as a country than lots of other jurisdictions are. Unemployment is lower in the UK, it's lower in Australia, it's lower in the US, right? It's higher here. And it's higher here because the government's made a deliberate choice to allow unemployment to rise so that it can deliver its other objectives. And that trade-off is what I don't think need to be made.
That's terrifying. Chewie, any other questions or comments to wrap up?
They're going to talk about this 5.3% and try and walk that around and going, that's great. You know, it's great. It's great news. It's a good number. I really want to focus on the fact that that's a lot worse for certain segments of our community, of our country, isn't it? Because we've always seen that unemployment rates are much higher for certain segments of the community.
Yeah.
So 5.3 sounds, you know, it's pretty bad. How bad is it for, say, Māori, Pacific Islanders, youth?
Well, unemployment for unemployment for those groups is more than double the rate, right, than it is the general population, right? For tall, handsome white economists like me, it's pretty low, right? But for everybody,
sorry, hang on. Sorry.
I think
you're a numbers guy, Craig.
Yeah.
You're a numbers guy. What number are you using for the tall part? That's all I want to know.
All I'm going to say is, Pat, you let the handsome bit go, so I'm going to leave that.
That's
there.
fine. I think you're using some kind of inverse metric. Would that be fair?
But in terms of us, we'll be fine, right? If you're Māori, 10.5% unemployment. That means more than 1 in 10 Māori are currently unemployed.
Yeah.
For Pacifica, it's 10.8%. For 15 to 24-year-olds, they have a non-seasonally adjusted rate of what we call NEET, so they're not in education, employment, or training. 14.4% of all 15 to 24-year-olds are not in education, employment, or training, right? That's an enormous number, right? These are enormous figures of people, right? And yet everything we're doing in the labour market, right, is going to make that harder to fix. 90-day trials, so we can hire people and fire people whenever you like, right? We're reducing sick leave. So if you get sick, you should be able to take it. It's going to get harder if you occasionally need sick leave. Pay equity yesterday, right? You know, getting ahead, filling the jobs that we need to fill because those jobs are going to be paid less, right? All we're doing is taking all those skilled people and we're pointing them at the airport, right? And then we wonder why there's no work in New Zealand, why there's no skills in New Zealand, why we can't get things done. And the economics of this is really straightforward. It's not hard, right? We create jobs, we create development because there's plenty of things to be doing. There's plenty of things that need to be done that would improve the economy in the long run. We have the capacity to do them, but we're choosing not to. That is, if you open the Cambridge English Dictionary and you look at the phrase, and you look for the definition of the word austerity, the definition of the word is poor economic conditions caused by government choices. If this isn't what this is, I don't know what it is.
So if I can extrapolate out from those unemployment numbers, right? Because it's your time spent unemployed just tends to snowball, right? There's always the classic interview question. You know, there's a gap in your resume. What were you doing? Oh, you're unemployed for 2, 3, 4 years. It becomes harder. You get caught behind. You start just treading water trying to keep up, and especially if you're young, if you can't get into, as you said, training or employment or that sort of thing, even more so. And then we sit here and we wring our hands and wonder, what are we doing about our poverty numbers? Why have we suddenly gained this underclass of people who exist on government benefits or cross the lines of society into crime? It's because we put them there. Because these guys decided that putting a whole lot of people on the breadline or putting them on subsistence work, underemployed. I'll work part-time and I won't make any ructions about my pay and anything like that because I have to hold on to this job. This is the thing that is keeping me afloat. So you're not going to push for better paying conditions. You're not going to call your boss on his shitty employment practices or business practices. You don't want to rock the boat. This is great for the shoddy business owners. It's fantastic. All their work is very, very quiet. And this is great for all of those people that have the resources to fund big, fat donations to national systems working as intended. Thank you very much. So of this, I think we saw from Luxon the truth there. What do you think about these employment numbers? Well, they're great, aren't they? Oh shit, I'm not supposed to say that. I mean, fuck.
So we have a pretentious phrase for it in economics, like many things. We call it wage scarring, right? So when you lose your job, you find it really hard to get the next job. So often you'll take a job that pays less because you just need to get income. Yeah. So you just you'll take a part-time job. You were doing something which you were using your skills, but now there's a job that's not using your skills, but you just need the cash. Yeah. And that gap, we call that wage scarring. Now, New Zealand has some of the worst wage scarring in the developed world because, one, the difference between the welfare state and any job is so high. But two, when workers lose their job, there's so little support to get them back into good work, decent work, that they'll take whatever job is available to them. That's part of the reason why our productivity figures are so bad, because people are in the wrong jobs, because their skills are in one place, but they've had to take a job somewhere else. It's part of the reason why when people lose their jobs in New Zealand, they get on an airplane and leave overseas because the gap to the next job is so big.
Right.
Those things around the rest of the world are tackled by things like proper unemployment insurance schemes, by proper welfare states, by active labour market programs, none of which are currently being proposed by this government. The only thing we have from this government is more sanctions and more threats, and that's it.
I have a question for you both. Chewie, you need to be involved with this. Because I want your guys' opinion on a question. Do either of you actually believe, like if Labour came out as an election promise and they said, times are really tough, we're going to need to borrow for the next few years and drive that into infrastructure, but I'll tell you what we're going to do once that we've all caught up with ourselves, where they're going to pull back in. Basically, could a party get elected actively advertising, Craig, these solutions that you're talking about? Because it feels like no one's ever done that. So, you're mates with people in the Labour Party. I'm sure you've said this to them. I don't think they've ever said this publicly. I mean, if the party was actually honest about it, and when times are shit, guys, but when times are shit, the government borrows, drives it in, keeps our people here. Then when times get good, could that work coming up to an election? Or would that then just get spun and, more importantly, believed that this irresponsible bunch of people just want to borrow your money and your grandkids are going to pay for it?
Well, they're going to try that anyway. But the alternative is right now is that the National Party is borrowing to pay for the tax cuts that they promised, right? The National Party is just cancelling everyone's pay equity deals to pay for the tax cuts that they promised, right? They're cancelling the infrastructure to pay for the tax cuts that they promised, right? So we need to do something different because we don't have the infrastructure, people don't have decent pay, and we also aren't any further ahead. So there are plenty of things that we can be doing. We have a $106 billion infrastructure gap in this country. Those are schools, hospitals, roads, things that should exist and don't because we simply haven't paid for them. Over the next 30 years, that infrastructure gap grows, according to the Infrastructure Commission, to $210 billion. Now, that gap's not getting any smaller if we keep not investing in New Zealand. workers aren't getting the skills to get them a good job if we keep not investing in those workers and those workforces. People don't have jobs, they don't have incomes, companies don't invest, we don't get jobs, and we go round and round and round this cycle. So to me, I think the one thing that I would strongly argue is that if you're in the middle of a recession, as Keynes famously said, the best thing you can stop doing is stop digging.
I would love to say that we are a mature enough country to have a conversation about that, but we are looking at decades of the National Party ploughing the same field, that they are the fiscally responsible ones. They are the ones that know business. They're the ones that aren't going to tax you so you can't get ahead, that sort of thing. We know it's not true. We have data to show that it's not true. But that is what Labour and the left get hit with every time, whether they're borrowing or not. And people keep on falling for it. So I kind of I do want them to put it out and just damn the torpedoes. We're going to talk to you like you're rational adults. We're not going to talk about balancing a household budget. We're not going to talk about all of this sort of stuff. This is how government works. What we are going to do are we are going to tax the people that have the money, that they've done well out of this country. They've done well out of their workers. They've done well out of the consumers that bought their products. They're doing fine. They've got enough money to donate to the National Party, hand over fist, 5-1 compared to the left parties. They have money. We're not going to touch you if, pulling a number out of thin air, you make $150,000 a year. We're not going to touch you. You got a small business, you're a tradie, whatever, not going to touch you. So we need this money.
When it comes to borrowing, I want your viewers to think about one number, which is 1.6. New Zealand's net interest payments, because New Zealand, of course, the government receives interest on the assets that it holds and the money that it has, and it pays interest on the debt that it has. The total borrowing costs, the net borrowing costs, after we've taken away the interest that we receive, is 1.6% of GDP. Can you imagine your mortgage being 1.6% of your income?
Yes. Now, 1.6 is also very close to a number that we've also been talking about this week. We found $2 billion for helicopters because the money was needed, so we found the money.
But 1.6 billion, 1.6% of your income, if that was your mortgage interest payment, you would be laughing. You would be hosed, right?
Yeah.
But that is essentially how much in a net basis we pay after we take away the interest we get from the assets that we have, right? So when someone tells you there's a debt crisis in New Zealand, blow raspberries in their face, because 1.6%, right, net interest payment is nothing. But we do know we have giant liabilities for investment, for future buildings, for other things that we're just not doing. And our kids will have to pay that so that we don't have to.
I was just thinking, Craig, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers. You do, obviously, always. Taking that 1.6% to 5% is still a very low amount when you think how you've just explained it, but I'm sure that would be a huge amount of infrastructure being paid for if it was 5%.
Well, not only would it be a huge amount of infrastructure that was being paid for, you would grow the economy more quickly. You would have better urban infrastructure. People would have housing. You wouldn't be paying to keep people in hospital because they're kept there, because they've got respiratory tract disorders, because they're living in cold, damp housing. You would be growing the GDP part, so that 5% would actually get smaller because our economy would be larger.
Yeah, and you're looking at flow-on effects like people not having to rely on an accommodation supplement as much because we're building more houses and they're in better jobs and all of this sort of stuff. There's all of these downstream effects, right?
Yeah, there's more work, right? people die less often because of poor air quality in urban centres, right? People are in better paid employment. There's less child poverty. The best estimates we have of child poverty in New Zealand is that child poverty costs somewhere in the order of around 4%, 4-5% of GDP each year.
Wow.
So you can either choose, right, to wrestle down the debt until there is no debt. The only country historically that got anywhere near completely reducing their debt was Romania under communist Nicolae Ceausescu. Yeah, it's not a place
Oh,
you
that's a
want
good
to
comparison.
sort of try and and replicate, right? So it's one of your people one of your viewers has put in their comment. The thing is, businesses borrow all the time to invest, and then they grow, and then we put the entrepreneurs on the fronts of magazines and lionize them for being brilliant.